يا راغبا في كل علم نافع.
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن. وتعلم الفقه الميسر عاملا بالشرع دون تعصب لفلان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه. So what is prohibited upon a woman who is in her menses or in her postnatal bleeding state? Well, it is prohibited for a woman in her menses or in her postnatal bleeding state to do a number of things. The first thing is she is not allowed to pray. In the hadith of Mother Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, that we were ordered to make up for the days missed while fasting, and we were not ordered to make up for the days we missed for the days that we did not pray in. And also the hadith of Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh, the Prophet said, when you calculate that it's your menses time of the month, abandon salat. Number 2, fasting. So fasting is also prohibited when a woman is in her menses, but she's obliged to make up for the missed days of Ramadan once she is pure. The hadith of that supporting it, that the Prophet said, alayhi salam, isn't one of you females, when she has her menses, she does not fast and she does not pray? They said yes, and this is agreed upon. Thirdly, a woman in her menses or in the state of nifas, postnatal bleeding, she's not allowed to perform tawaf around the Kaaba, because the Prophet said to Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, when she had her menses and they were on their pilgrimage, he said, do everything that a pilgrim does, but do not go around the Kaaba in tawaf. Fourthly, she's not allowed to touch the Mus'haf, the Quran, because the Prophet said the Quran is not to be touched by anyone who's not in the state of purity. But she may touch it when needed with a barrier, such as gloves or a piece of cloth. And it's worth noting that though she is in her state of menses or postnatal bleeding, she is allowed to recite and read the Quran without any problem. But touching it is what she's prohibited from doing. Number 5, a woman in her menses or in her postnatal bleeding state is prohibited from entering the masjid and staying in it, because the Prophet ﷺ once asked Mother Aisha to hand him something while he was in the masjid and she was in her home. So she said, O Prophet of Allah, I'm in my menses. And the Prophet said, I know that you're in menses. Your menses is not in your hand. Meaning when you reach out inside, this is permissible. You're not coming in. Your hand is not in the state of menses, your body is, which indicates that there's no problem in reaching out, but not in entering the masjid. Number 6, to be intimate with with women. And we mean by that to be or to have intercourse with your spouse while she's in the state of menses. Allah says in the Quran, so keep away from wives during menstruation and do not approach them until they are pure. And this refers only to intercourse, to be intimate, to caress, to hug, to enjoy oneself other than having intercourse is totally permissible and halal. Number 7, divorce. So when a woman is in her menses, it is prohibited to divorce her. What do you mean, Shaykh? I'm angry with my wife. I don't want to live with her anymore. It is mandatory upon you to wait until she's clean from her menses and she has her ghusl and ready. Then you can inflict divorce if you wish. Otherwise, you would be sinful, because Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, O Prophet, when you, that is Muslims, divorce women, divorce them for the commencement of their waiting period, meaning that you have to allow them to begin their waiting period, which is after having her menses. And also in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, when he divorced his wife when she was in her menses, the Prophet said to Umar, tell him, that is, tell your son to take her back, then divorce her when she is in the state of purity, not menstruating, or when she is pregnant. Now, some of the rules or the points that should one pay attention to, if a woman is pure and now the adhan of dhuhr is called, for example, and after maybe half an hour she gets her menses and she did not pray, is she obliged to make up for that after she's pure 7 days later? It's an issue of dispute. The most authentic opinion is no, she is not obliged to make it up, unlike what is mentioned in the textbook, because there's nothing to oblige her to do so. Allah Azza wa Jal never ordered her to do so. She did not do a sin or a mistake, and she was in the time frame where she was allowed to postpone and delay the prayer without any problem. What about if a woman was fasting and a minute or two before sunset she gets her period? Just a minute before sunset. In this case, her fast is null and invalidated by her period because the sun did not set. And what if she was on her menses during the daytime of Ramadan, and in the middle of the day she saw her purity, she performed ghusl? Is she obliged to make up for that day? The answer is yes, of course. She didn't fast. Okay, do we oblige her to continue to fast till the rest or to the end of the day? The answer is no. She was not obliged to fast it from the beginning. We don't oblige her to fast it the rest of the days. So what is al-mustahada? Al-mustahada is a woman who suffers from irregular bleeding. And this woman who suffers from such non-menstrual bleeding has rules. Among them, she's obliged to pray and fast. Well, she sees the blood, Shaykh. Yes, but this blood is not her monthly cycle. She's only ordered to stop fasting, praying, and being intimate with her spouse when she has her monthly cycle. So how do we differentiate between monthly cycle and istihada? Well, monthly cycle comes 6 or 7 days a month. Istihada is when this is prolonged beyond the norm. How does a woman in her non-menstrual bleeding state or istihada pray? Well, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, whenever the time of the prayer begins and you want to pray, you should wash your private part, change your soiled clothes, and perform wudu. Okay, Shaykh, but while she's performing wudu, she's still bleeding. This has no impact. She prays. While she's praying, she's still bleeding. This has no impact on the validity of her prayer. Of course, we have to point out that she has to put the necessary means and pads to ensure that the blood does not leak while she is praying. And she has to do the same procedure whenever the time expires and she wants to pray once again the following prayer. She has to change her soiled clothes or pad, wash her private part, and perform wudu. Now, if a woman is inflicted with a prolonged state of istihada, irregular bleeding, how should she behave? There are three types. Number one, if she has had a fixed number of days every lunar month, which normal women usually do in the beginning of the month, in the middle of the month, at the end of the month, and every month it comes at the same time. And all of a sudden, it's changed, and she's having prolonged, irregular bleeding sessions. In this case, scholars say she has to identify the time that she used to get her period from, for example, day 1 to day 7 of every Hijri month. So she considered this to be her monthly cycle. And although the blood is continuously coming, on the 7th day, she performs ghusl. And she begins to pray, fast, and be intimate with her husband and consider the bleeding to be istihada. Case number 2, what if the bleeding is continuing and she does not remember having a fixed period of time in the month for her menses? Or she had different days every month. In this case, scenario number 2, she's ordered to distinguish. So the bleeding throughout the month, it has characteristics of menses. So she knows that, okay, from this day till this day, the blood is dark, the smell is the smell of the menses, I got my cramps and pain, back pain. So she considered this to be her menses, and then she continues to consider the rest to be irregular bleeding. Number 3, what if the bleeding is all look-alike and she cannot distinguish or differentiate? In this case, we tell her to look into her womenfolk, her sisters, her mom, her cousins, and check what is the most likely time of the month that they get their menses, and she should imitate them and follow suit and consider herself in her menses as well. Now, a woman in her istihada or irregular menses bleeding or whatever, she is not the same as the woman in her monthly cycle, because she can pray, she can fast, she can touch the mushaf, she can be intimate with her spouse, and she can perform tawaf and the likes. So the only difference between al-mustahada and a woman in her menses is that she does not pray and she does not fast. That is, the woman in her monthly cycle, that she is not similar to her in any of the rulings at all, except that she has to purify herself, perform wudu whenever the time of the prayer begins, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.
يا راغبا في كل علم نافع
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن، وتعلم الفقه الميسر عاملا بالشرع دون تعصب لفلان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.